I've got to be honest with you. I don't know if strong arming your wife is the best way to keep her on your side when she's already pretty distraught with you. Shout out to Rusty for always trying new things. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. The 6th episode of Presumed Innocent is here. It is called The Elements. We are in the thick of the trial here. This episode begins with Rusty sort of having an existential view and look of the court, of the trial that's happening. He is sort of having an out-of-body experience, and he's in the courtroom, but he is looking at jurors. His spirit is looking at jurors, looking at plaintiffs, looking at the courthouse, looking at everybody, and looking at the doctor who is giving the testimony about the medical evidence, the medical examiner that sort of found the skin cells all of a sudden. Dr. Herbert is giving his testimony. He's basically explaining how the crime took place. He says that she took a blunt blow to the back of her head, fell on her face, and then took 2 more pretty brutal bash to the back of the head, and that is what was the final blow. One of those 2 bashes was the final blow that actually killed her. He says that there was a thin, heavy object that was used as the murder weapon, and Raymond sort of crosses, coming back to saying, well, has anybody found that weapon? Do we know where that's at? Has anybody located that? You keep speaking of this weapon, but no one has it. Where is it at? And that was sort of Raymond's redirect. All things accounted for, the way that's set up, Tommy should have just left that alone. He sort of had the upper hand. The Emmy did what he was supposed to do in this situation. But Tommy couldn't let things go because the murder weapon wasn't there. He saw a little bit of credibility being lost. He then crossed again with Dr. Herbert and left sort of the door open for Dr. Herbert to get eviscerated, which he does. But on the redirect, Tommy says, hey, on the day that Carolyn's body came to you, Rusty came to see the body. Is that normal? Does he normally do that? Does he normally come immediately when a murder happens to look at the body? He's like, no, that's not normal. And he's like, well, how was the state? What was he like that day? He's like, he didn't just want to know about he wanted to know my findings. He wanted to probably kind of get ahead of it. He just seemed off. He's basically projecting what he feels about Rusty and how he felt and looked that day on there. He felt off. He looked off. If you're paying attention, you can see in the very moment in that, like, Nico kind of was like, well, what is he doing? Like, why did he redirect this? And sort of see that the door has been opened. And Raymond kicks that bad boy down. Raymond comes back and was like, well, hold on. Do you like Rusty? And he's like, have you ever referred to him as an asshole? And he's like, yes, I have. He's like, have you referred to me as an asshole? Do you just not like defense attorneys? Like, and he just piles on to the fact that he now just looks like he's an enemy that has a vendetta. And so any credibility that has sort of been given on the murder scene and sort of laying that all out there is kind of washed out because you now make this guy look like he's just angry at Rusty and anybody who is against him on the defensive side. And so Nico chews Tony out on the ride home. Like, what are you doing? Like, you could have stopped. You should have stopped. We had them. We had everything sort of set. And Tommy's like, well, I'm trying to prove that he is a vengeful, vindictive, off-the-rails man, and I needed that to do so. He didn't. He's like, I needed that to sort of do so. Nico's like, we didn't have to redirect. We had the doc, and we had everything that we needed there. The jury was in our hands, and you kind of just gave that up. So now this is a net. He calls it a net loss. Tommy says it's a net zero. But basically, they went from having a surefire W to kind of like, maybe. So for more court prep, Raymond, Maya, Rusty, and Barbara all meet. And they are basically saying that, hey, the 2 of you need to show more unity in the courthouse. And you guys are not coming off like you guys are a couple. Kind of seem very disparate. Tomorrow, we're going to show photos of the murder scene. And we sort of need you guys to just be looking straight forward the whole time. Don't look at them. Don't acknowledge the photos. And also when that happens, when you guys have moments, Rusty, put your arm over her or look back at her longingly, kind of show that you guys have a couple. And Barbara's like, hold on, you want him to show that he's my protector? And they're like, yes. And Barbara's like, you can take that idea and shove it. No, that is not what's going to happen. I'm going to show my truth. I am shocked and disgusted and um, taken aback and just ashamed of everything that I am seeing in this courtroom. And I want the jury to see that. I'm not going to pretend and put on this facade for you or the jury. I'm going to be who the hell I am. I would say that me being here in the courtroom is enough to show that I believe my husband. Anything else that comes on my face or any of my reactions that come from what I hear or what I see, they are going to be honest. And there's not going to be any sugarcoating of that. Not mad at that idea. Probably not the best for Rusty, because I do think the court of public opinion is also a piece of this. Um, but I understand her stance. So next up on the case is the forensic pathologist, who essentially says that the initial kill was sudden, and then everything that sort of took place after that was a methodical placement. So it feels like the the initial kill blow or initial idea of the murder wasn't planned or strategized, but then post that became very much to clean up everything. At this point, that Raymond tries to introduce Liam to the case, like put him in as a possible person. Basically, he uses the idea of like, "Hey, she was tied up in a matter. Do you remember the case? Have you ever had a case before that was similar to the way that she was tied up?" He says, "Yes." Who was it? Rusty and Carolyn were on that case, so on and so forth. Leave the breadcrumbs to Liam so he can introduce Liam. The judge says, "Nah, we're not doing that. Like, I see what you're doing, but you need to give me more than just, hey, I'm going to posit this idea. I need something that physically says that this is the way you're going to go, and that it makes sense to bring him up. Otherwise, don't go that way." And he's like, "Okay, fine, won't go that way." He then introduces the skin cells and how he's like, were these just skin cells that were under her fingernails? Not like full on skin. Like you weren't finding complete whole skin grafts. It wasn't like he was scratched. You're saying skin cells. Like, yeah, it's like, so by the very token of it just being skin cells, can you just do that by like rubbing your face, or you kind of get that by just brushing your hair, or like rubbing your back or scrubbing your back? It's like, yeah, that could. It's like, very well, these skin cells could be from Carolyn kissing Rusty and Rusty kissing her back, then Rusty killing. And he's like, yeah, the skin cells could be either way. So that piece has sort of been kind of in the middle ground as well. Raymond's doing a really good job of sort of negating everything because they don't have a murder weapon. Because they don't have a murder weapon, it's very difficult to sort of put the full burden of proof on Rusty. Even though he's right now the only person that's sort of on the board as an option. We see a moment where Barbara kind of goes into, I guess they have like a back house where she sort of re-engages with her painting to sort of probably release stress, but also disassociate a little bit from the case and everything. She kind of wants to do her own thing and kind of just get her mind off of every. You got to think about it. She is now being paraded around as the wife who stayed with a person who had an affair. Now she has to be here in this courthouse when the affair is. No matter what happens in this case, the affair happened, and this woman was pregnant. She's got to be the face of the person that stays with them. But in addition to that, she now has to be the person who has to be there to show that I don't believe he murdered, but if he did, I'm still behind him. Like she's got a lot that she has to process. So this is her way of sort of releasing and escaping. Eugenia, the other courthouse person, who's fond of Rusty, but apparently was not very fond of Carolyn, is on trial, is on the stand next. Tommy is sort of establishing that, hey, did you know of the affair? And she's like, yes, I was aware of it. Wasn't aware of it originally. I had some ideas, I had some things, some rumblings, but nothing really um, aware until I saw them. When I was trying to drop off a file, I saw them kissing. I quickly knocked on the door, gave them the file, and got the hell up out of there. Carolyn followed me. It was a bit of embarrassment, but I never really brought it up again. But I did start seeing that it appeared that Rusty was going down a big spiral of not being his best self. I saw a moment when they were arguing in the parking lot and she pulled off and he was knocking on the glass. I could just see him becoming less of who he was. And I spoke to him about it because I was in fear of him sort of losing himself in her. Raymond crosses and says, hey, you never liked Carolyn. Like, no, I wasn't a big fan of hers. And then is asked, "Did you report this to HR?" And she says, "No, this was never. I didn't report it to HR. From what I could tell, Carolyn and Rusty never reported this to HR. This was never brought up to HR." But Carolyn did make one complaint to HR, and it was against Tommy Malto. It's the scene that we saw before. It's also what we sort of put together. If you're paying attention, Michael mentioned earlier in the season that somebody was bothering my mother enough to the fact she didn't tell me the name, but she told me that somebody was bothering her and she didn't want to work in a case with her. Then he thought immediately it's Rusty. And then we see a scene later in the season where Tommy straight up asks her, like, "Why don't you want to work with me? Like, I hear there's an issue that you don't want to work with me." So it's for the first time you sort of hear that an HR complaint has been made against him. And so Tommy has a bigger bug to sort of bite down on Carolyn and get to this than was originally led on. And I'm sure obviously it's an HR complaint. He's been made aware of this complaint. He knew this was there. I don't know if Nico. Doesn't seem like Nico was aware, but anyway, there's a huge reaction when that comes up. It's like, oh, okay. Tommy redirects with Eugenia and kind of like, "Well, did you have any knowledge of the complaint that was made against me?" She's like, "No, I had no knowledge of it. I don't know what the actual complaint was or what it said. I just know that I asked her and she said she never wanted to do cases with you ever. The exact word was that you give her the ick." Put that on record. Much like I said earlier, Lorraine and Raymond are meeting, sort of having a discourse over dinner, and Raymond's like, Tommy's doing a decent enough job, in that if the jury stick with just the burden of proof, Rusty's going to win. We should be fine. But if the jury feels that they have to pin this on somebody, like we have to give them a win, somebody who has murdered this, it's going to be Rusty because there's nobody else on the table. That's what sort of makes me uncomfortable. Rusty speaks with Jaden because Jaden read a couple of psychology books and feels like she can diagnose her dad. But she's questioning like, "Dad, like, are you having a dissociative order right now? Like maybe you're disassociating with the night of this and you're just not remembering." Rusty's like, I'm not having that. Bless you for thinking that, but no, that's not what's occurring. After a workout, he goes upstairs and Barbara's needs to get some stuff off her chest. And she informs him that a couple weeks ago, she had a fling with Clifton and they kissed. And Rusty originally just didn't say anything. He kind of just gathers himself. Doesn't do a very good job of gathering himself or calming himself down. First thing that he asks, like, where did it happen? He gets a little defensive and aggressive with her. It's like, "Hey, where did it happen?" She's like, "Well, in his home with his art." It's like, "Oh, yeah, you're at his art. You want to see a piece of art." He makes a joke, a juvenile joke, but at her expense. But like, yeah. And she's like, "No, nothing else happened. Nothing happened." He reiterates and asks, "Did you F him?" She's like, "No, I did not." And then he asks a question that I kind of was wondering too. She gets into it a little bit more with Lorraine in the next scene, but why are you telling me this now? Like, why are you? I'm on trial for my life right now. This, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't feel that important, especially if it's just a kiss. Why are you telling me this now? And she's like, and he kind of just starts letting in. He's like, you grind me over and over about every single detail that occurred with Carolyn. I have a problem here with, like, I get it that he's probably angry because it's coming at him in this very moment, but Rusty, what you did and what Barbara did is not on the same level. They are not anywhere equal. But he feels in this moment that it is. He's like, you grind me about this, you grind me about this. How does it feel now? How does it feel to be blamed over one mistake? Not the same. Yours was a career long thing and you were like obsessed. That hers, I would lean more into the mistake thing. Even though she was aware of what she was doing, both of you were. Hers felt like more like a mistake. Rusty felt like you were like, "Hey, I want a side thing because I'm not getting what I need to get at home." When he brings up the one mistake piece of it, she gets up to leave and say, "F you, Rusty." And he says back, "F me, fuck me," and grabs her arm very violently. And the look on his face is a man filled with rage. Similarly how he punched that man on his front front porch. That's how he looks here. It's very unhinged. It then sort of dissipates because he realizes what he has done and he lets her go, and she looks a bit of it in shock. And he stands there looking worried. And as she goes to make a call, probably to a therapist, I don't know, but she steps away. And then the next day, when the court case is about to occur, she chooses not to go to court with him. In fact, no one goes to the court with him. Jane offers, she's like, hey, I'm a good seat filler. I'll go in her place. And he's like, no, I don't need to have you go. They have a long hug because in truth, he does want her to go because right now, this is the first time that he's going completely alone. There's nobody else going to be there on his side with him. Barbara goes to talk to Lorraine and says, I told him because I thought we were on the right road. Like I thought we were bonding. I thought we were reconnecting. I thought things were good. And because I thought things were good, I thought I wanted to have a clean slate. Like I didn't want to hold anything back. I felt like we were telling each other everything. And I needed to tell him this so that I could be at peace. I get where she's coming from. I just don't know if the timing is correct. Like this man's on for his trial. He's got a lot of things happening. You just kissed. If you were having sex, then sure, maybe you want to bring this up, but this seems it's very trivial. And because it was just a kiss, he's now going to, and you went to his apartment to have this fling. It's going to lead to more questions and more thoughts in his head anyways. The timing just seems off. But she tells Lo, like, I blew this. And he did not respond well at all. Barbara says, I'm not going to court today, but it's just not for today. I will go tomorrow. Lorraine was like, okay, well, from now on, when you go, I will go with you. And it's at that point that Barbara says, the main reason why I'm not going, it's a good day to not go, is that they are showing the findings of what's on both of their computers, both Rusty's and Carolyn's computers. And there's just a lot of stuff on there that I may not be prepped to see or get that information while I'm in front of others. And it's going to be pretty damning that he texted her 30 times on the day of the murder. That's just a lot. Carolyn's ex-husband, Michael's father, is trying to block Michael from testifying. And Tommy's like, well, that can't be. He's a major piece of this case. And the judge's like, I'm not throwing it out. I'm not doing that. But to his point, there is a lot of trauma that is about to occur if Michael is to testify. So I'm sort of giving you this branch now. She talks to Tommy and them's like, you guys aren't getting any better than murder two. The most, Rusty gets 8 years and then walks out free. Like that's the best right now. That is the best that you can get. With you, there's no way that I can see you walking out of here free. So the best that I can see for you, Rusty, is you getting manslaughter. She sort of offers like, hey, does anybody want to blink? Now's the time. If anybody wants to pick a plea and blink, now's the time. And Rusty's like, no, the only thing that I want from him is an apology. And it's very much in this frat boyish thing, which the judge calls them out on. And they're being two frat boys saying, no, I'm not giving up. You call chicken. No, you play chicken. I'm not playing chicken. And neither of them are really willing to give up a stance. And so she checks with everybody. She checks with Rusty, Tommy, Nico, and Raymond. They all don't blink and say, nope, we're going to go through it. She's like, okay, we'll tread carefully. And I will see you guys in court tomorrow. That night, Rusty asks Barb, why did she stay? And she says, this is the same reason you do. It's the family. It's not said for either, but it's their kids, it's their family, it's their unit. Like that's why they are still in this. But I feel like it's more damning for him. She's doing it honestly, like because I want to keep this family together. I want to stay here. I want to be a part of this. It feels like for him, while it is family, it's a selfish thing in that I want this. I wanted this with Carolyn, but I can't leave this. Like I still have to be a father. I still want to be this for me. Like if he could have, I feel like if Rusty honestly could have replaced Carolyn and put her in the family fold without Barbara, he would have done that in a heartbeat. And so, whereas I don't think Barbara would ever want to not have the family unit without Rusty. And so they have different meanings of what the family is supposed to be, which is unfortunate for Barbara, but I think. then we see Michael on the stand, and he's being a bit prickly, but um, he's an angry kid, and understandably so. Apparently, Carolyn wanted nothing to do with this boy and pushed him off to go stay with her son, and basically lived her life without having to act like he was there, which is a hard thing for if a mother's doing that. That's there's something there. So Carolyn may not be clearly all that she's cracked up to be, but he was very upset. He's like, I always went over there without my father knowing to just watch, to just stare and watch, to see her live the life that she preferred to live without me in it. And so I mainly stared off from her back and just saw in the darkness, and I just looked at all the people that came and went. And for the most part, it was him. And he points to Rusty. He's like, he was the one that was going in and out of there. And then Tommy has them show a video of Rusty the night of the murder, and time stamped to like right before all of this took place. Tommy then says, hey, you subsequently, after your mother's death, text the defendant, text Rusty, and asked him to meet you. You guys met. What was said there? He's like, I just wanted to look. He actually asked him first, why did you want to do that? He's like, I wanted to look at the guy. I wanted to look into the eyes of the person who murdered my mother. He repeats that. That's one time. And then he repeats it again when he's like, well, when you got there, what did he say? What did you tell him when Rusty asked? Because he's purposely doing this. He wants them to kind of recycle that phrase into the jury's heads. But he says, when you got there, and Rusty asked, why did you want to meet? What did you say? And he said, I wanted to look into the eyes of the person who murdered my mother. So just to kind of like get that in. And the judge like, all right, that's enough. Um, Michael's putting on a lot of sauce on this as stating things that are his opinion as fact. So the judge has to say, hey, I need you to change that up. You can things that you believe or that you are impressed, but you can't sort of make these things facts. He then talks about the time that he came to the station to meet with his bicycle and to meet with Tommy and Nico. He's like, you told me about the man who your mother um, was afraid of, and said that she didn't want to be around and made her nervous. He's like, yeah, and I know that was him. Now if you're smart, you're paying attention, you know that that's actually Tommy that he's referring to, but no one has sort of picked up on that or changed that line of questioning or put that towards Tommy. Now, especially now knowing that the HR piece is in play in this hearing, I thought, and everything seemed to show that when Raymond got up, I thought he was having an epiphany and it was clicking that, hey, maybe I should say, are you 100% sure that the person he wasn't talking about was Tommy? Because he sort of freezes and looks like he's got like, oh, I got the idea. The light bulb just switched off. But that's not what was happening. He was having some type of cardiac arrest, stroke, not sure, heart attack, but he drops to the ground and has to be attempted to be resuscitated by medical examiners, medical staff that are at the courthouse, while Rusty and Lorraine sort of look on in fear. And that's the episode. It's a crazy way to end this episode because it ends on such a cliffhanger and a big piece. This show does always lift on cliffhangers, but this is the first time that I actually was like, you sons of, um, good episode. I love anytime we get into court proceedings to see how people play tit for tat and one man is like a game of tennis. You ever watch tennis and see them go back and forth? It's sort of fun to see how they choose to go about the court. And I think Raymond and Tommy were serving each other quite well. I do think the most damning piece of this episode, though, is the Rusty Barbara scenario when he grabs her. Again, Rusty has shown a level of being angry. Now, I don't think he's murdered Carolyn because I actually think he cared more about Carolyn than he did Barbara. He does Barbara, but it's clear that he has an angry streak about him that I think is probably going to rear his head one more time in this case before it's all said and done. It's going to lean the jury towards it being him until something else comes out that says, oh, no, this can be somebody else. I don't think they're going to find Rusty guilty. I just don't currently see anybody who they can offer up that is a credible second option. And that's I Tommy's who it sort of is the breadcrumbs are there. I just don't know how we get there outside of the Michael piece, and especially right now. I don't know how that gets brought back up. Especially right now, I don't know with all the hubbub that's come up, I don't know if Michael gets to get put back on stand. Like, I feel like with this heart attack or stroke happening, Michael may be dismissed and has done enough of what he's supposed to do. So I don't know who you would bring up to sort of get further into that Tommy piece. But solid episode. What did you guys think about this episode? Go ahead and leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name. That's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any other place podcasts. We're there. Like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.